Alright guys, pardon the messy workbench. It's just kind of the reality, I think, when you put something like this together. So I wanted to show you guys how the servo actually goes in this. At least I found the best way with a couple of different servos that are basically almost the same size. So the servo I'm running, you guys saw in the last video, X2. It's a shift servo, direct power. I also have this Three Brothers RC. That's the G13 Pro. Very similar size as well. We have a Reefs 555, which is pretty much the same too. Now I think the key, if you're going to actually like plan this out a little more detailed than I did, I had already ordered a servo well before there was anyone on the internet talking about having issues getting it in. But the I think the key is you just want a servo that's as short from the front side of these flanges that it mounts to the edge of the actual servo spline. The issue is well, there's a couple. There's one of being able to actually like get it in the chassis, and another one of servo horn clearance on this front bar right here. So I wanted to take this all the way out, but I do worry that I'm going to end up messing up the wires going into the servo. So another thing to consider is there's a ProTech servo. I know at least the 170 TBL. I have one in my Rift, and I was going to get it out, but if you guys have ever worked on a Rift, you got to kind of pull it apart in order just to pull a servo out, because the radio box is kind of buried in it. But anyways, so the best way I found is to actually enter the servo. I'll kind of show this, use this as a demonstration. Feed the wires through, enter it this way underneath this bar, get this one hooked, this like the wire protector that comes out of the servo case, get it hooked, kind of pull it as far as you can. You'll kind of smash it a little bit, and then see if you can get this other side in there. Now once you got that, basically you're in the position I'm in right here, and it's pretty simple. It's real tight. You kind of just slide it back, and it's not a force thing, it's more of a finesse thing. So kind of back and forth. This front of the servo case is hitting this bar before it can actually sit down. There you go, just like that. Now we're going to move the GoPro a little bit, and we're going to show you what kind of clearances we're working with on the servo horn. So I'm going to try to show this as good as I can. So the servo is sitting down as low as it possibly can be in the mount, and I already knew right away that we might run into some issues with the servo horn. Now I use these Vanquish servo horns. I like that they clamp. You don't really have to use Loctite on them, and you just put the actual screw in and then put the clamping screws in. Just go back and forth between the two, and it'll clamp on really well. But let me set the camera down for a second, and I'll get the horn on there. So as you can see, I've got to hold this up. It's got no shocks on it or anything yet. We have basically no clearance between that front bar of the chassis and that servo horn. They actually slightly rub. So I'm deciding if I want to. It's really minimal. I'm going to do a little bit of spacing between the servo and the servo mount, just a couple of washers, maybe one on each hole, maybe two, and then it'll kind of level it out a little bit. And then I'm trying to decide if I want to go ahead and take pretty much just the chassis coating off where that servo horn is hitting, or let it machine itself over time. Just let it be, make sure it operates, and then eventually it will just kind of rub an area that it needs to rub. Probably not real good on the servo to have any friction right there, but it's ever so slight. It's making a very small contact patch, so I don't think it's super concerning, but another thing you kind of consider, that's one of the problems with one of these clamping servos. They make really, really low profile ones, and I may look and see if I can find one that, you know, kind of fits around that servo spline a little bit tighter. But I was kind of looking through, and all I have is plastic, and I'm not going to run a plastic servo horn on this vehicle. So I may kind of look at my other trucks and see if I have anything else. The only other one I found, I think, is a ProTech clamping servo horn, and it's, you know, even less low profile than this. So just a few of the only things that I've ran into. You know, you guys are just getting a really, you know, raw video here. Another thing is, these are the 80mm shocks. Now, I have a Phoenix straight axle kit that, if you've listened to the podcast at all, you know what that's going to be for. I think I'm going to have to go to 90s at least, and possibly go with longer shock ends, just to give myself a little bit more travel. That's just not enough. It basically sits less than parallel at full bump. The chassis actually hits right here on the risers. And then, so it doesn't even get full compression. It will, if you, you know, very rarely do you get full compression one way if you have springs. But since we're going to run droop, this is basically how it's going to ride. So, yeah, a little bit less than ideal, but we're going to try it out. I think the shock tuning on this and figuring out precise lengths and stuff that I want to use is going to be one of the more difficult things. Yeah, luckily I already have some 90mm shocks. I have a lot longer shocks too. I have a couple sets of capper shocks, brand new. Those are about 100mm, so you could add basically an inch. I could actually move it forward even more, but even at full compression it would probably sit there or so, and then, but it would probably give me a lot of articulation. I don't particularly care for the look of those, and that's kind of the reason I went with these factory SAD shocks. I think they look great, but we're just gonna have to figure it out, so stay tuned. All right, so that's gonna wrap up this Workbench vlog. The next video for the A1, you're gonna see, you know, just a regular, you know, kind of standard produced, edited video, a little bit more professional. Just wanted to get this out quick in case anyone's considering it, kind of show you some considerations, what the issues are with the servo. You probably are going to scratch your servo up getting it in there. I see why people are a little frustrated. I'm not really sure if it could have been done a better way. You know, I'm not a chassis designer, but I have to think that, you know, he was probably a little frustrated putting the first one in, or used a servo that was, you know, significantly smaller. Maybe a really high-powered, low-profile servo is kind of the move. Not sure. I know NSDRC, they make like an RS 700 low-profile, tons of power, and it's real small. That might be a pretty good move, something to check out. Maybe find the dimensions of it, you know, in comparison to this X2 from Shift. I know one of you commented saying, you know, you're interested in seeing kind of what I thought of the Panhard link and the drag link. It looks okay so far. It definitely looks proper. You know, it's using all the stock links, but can't really make an assessment yet, so stay tuned. Hopefully once I get it put together, I'll be able to make a pretty good call on that. In the next video, we're probably just going to kind of talk about the build as a whole. Hopefully I have it pretty much wrapped up. I'm sure I'm going to be doing a little bit of messing around with the shocks, trying to figure out, you know, what I want in order to make it work. Like I said, I have some longer shocks here. I got some 90s. I got some 100s, and I think I have some plus 5mm Vanquish, you know, shock ends. So I think we're going to be able to make it work, and looking forward to it. But I'm going to get back to it, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.